Hello, and you're very welcome to the Irish Seahawks Show here on the Under Center podcast. Dara and Al here with you on this second edition of our brand new show, focusing solely on our Seattle Seahawks. And for our second show, we thought we'd get a very special guest. We are delighted to be joined by Jacson Bevens from the Cigar Thoughts podcast with his cigar in tow, ready to go. Jackson, it's great to speak to you. How are you, sir?
I'm doing really well. I really appreciate you guys having me on, even despite the time difference. So really appreciate it, and glad to have the opportunity to join you guys.
It's absolutely no problem at all. We are well used over this side of the pond, staying up this late to watch Seahawks football because for some crazy reason, we decided to support a team on the west coast of America, not the east coast like the normal sane people do.
How did you guys end up being Seahawks fans?
I'll let you go first on that one.
Oh God, it was odd. I used to like the Seahawks unis, Hasselbeck and around that time, but there was no coverage around here. I just kind of saw a couple of bits if I could get on the internet. It wasn't really until kind of the Super Bowl years, 2012, 2013, that I really, could actually, have time to watch it. And so it's I haven't been a fan my whole life, but since then I've loved them, even though they've been hard to deal with sometimes.
Well, yeah. Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's like they're frustrated. I think every NFL team is frustrating to a degree for sure. But it's better to have those frustrations be relative to lofty expectations. Having been a Seahawks fan my whole life, having watched and followed this team closely, even when they've really struggled, to have the expectations be this should be a team that's winning games in the playoffs, and having an ownership and a front office and a coaching staff that sees that as the standard is nice. I mean, it gives you a lot more things to be frustrated about for sure. But winning games is just better. And Seattle's done that more than all but I think two teams in the last 10 years.
Yeah. For me, it's similar to Al's. For years, I would watch mostly kind of just the Super Bowl in bits and pieces, or if I was up the next day watching highlights. And the one year I decided to sit down and watch it live and all the way from start to finish was Super Bowl 48. And obviously throughout the whole game was Peyton Manning this, the Broncos that. And I'm a defensive guy. I love defense. And so when they were talking about the Legion of Boom and how good this defense is, I was like, okay, I can get on board with this. And then obviously we saw what happened in that game. The defense just took over, and I think that was me. I was like, right, I think this is going to be my team. And that's the beauty of being over here. We're sort of, I guess, not tied to where we live to support our team, which is good. We get to choose, but like I always say when it comes to the Seahawks over the last few years, I hate. Or they love to make me miserable, and I hate that I keep going back to them. And that's how it happens,
Yeah. The nice thing is they've been exciting for the most part.
Yeah. Well, it's newsworthy the last couple of years, which is great, And when we're kind of left, they're kind of left up there in the top left corner, and they don't get a lot of news coverage. And then obviously most of the last years just all been about Russ leaving and everything, and now Gino, the redemption story of Gino, and how Pete and John now have been able to sort of keep the team going. Now everyone thought it was going to, capsize when Russ left, and the season that they had, it's good. It's exciting, even though, obviously they didn't make a deep playoff run this past season. It's still been good. It's still been, it's good to have a team that you're happy to support and that you can really back.
Yes.
Yeah, we've been really spoiled. To be honest, I mean, you had the Super Bowl years, you had the Legion of Boom, you had Russ at his best. I mean, he was really good. I mean, people love, revisionist history, trying to pretend that Russ was never good for some reason, but he was great.
Russ was never good. What are you talking about?
Yeah, that's something that's going to it's going to take a little while for that to settle. I mean, he's certainly complicated his legacy here in Seattle over the last few years, and it's like a long-term relationship breaking up. If there weren't strong emotions on either side, it kind of makes you wonder about what the relationship was going in. And this last story that came out about him reportedly going to ownership to try and get Pete Carroll and John Schneider fired. The other stuff I think is kind of part and parcel with the evolution of Russell Wilson. I'm talking about, being a little bit more image conscious, celebrity focused, really, really positioning himself to be an icon in addition to being a quarterback. That's fine. The goofy sayings, the kind of all eyes on me, I'm going to out prep everybody and make sure you know about it. That stuff's fine. I honestly don't mind that stuff too much. But this is a big deal, to really try a power play of that level and to miss, to aim at the king and miss. It's a big deal. And I do think that's going to cause reverberations that last longer than it would have if he had just, kind of forced his way out and, that stuff would have settled. This might take a little longer.
Yeah, and it's funny as well because as soon as that article came out, he went straight onto Twitter denying everything, saying he had a great relationship with Pete and John, just wanted to win. But when there was other articles throughout the last year about it, you never heard anything from him, which kind of leads me to believe that there's a lot more in this than meets the eye, because a lot of people have sort of dismissed it. We've seen, obviously we get some of the Fox Sports analyst shows and stuff like that over here, and we see the clips, and a lot of people have dismissed it, saying this is not in Russ's character and stuff like this. But for him to so quickly come out against this one in particular just seemed a bit fishy to me.
Yeah, and he's done a lot of his communicating through his agent, who, by all accounts, is just a wild man in Mark Rodgers. I think that is kind of the most underrated aspect of the deterioration of the relationship between Russell Wilson and the team, is that he hired Mark Rodgers, who no one likes dealing with. And he's, Mark Rodgers is the one that was leaking Russell Wilson wants to be traded back, I think, in 2020. And these are the 4 teams he wants to go to, and kind of setting him up to make some of the comments he did about complaining about the offensive line and things like that. And I know that, Mark Rodgers has been really active in terms of like texting, unsolicited texts to Seahawks beat reporters about, dissatisfaction with the team. So he's just kind of a hatchet man for Russ, so that Russ could try and keep his image clean and not have to be the one saying this stuff. But it all kind of blew back on him. So prayers up for Denver, man. I don't think they really knew what they were getting with the Russell Wilson experience.
Yeah. I think officially now as well, now that all the picks and the compensation is done with, like, obviously you don't want your ex to do well, but you don't really care now with Russ now. If he does well this next season, all well and good for him. It's not going to do anything for the Seahawks in terms of draft picks or anything like that. We've already got that number 5, so we're absolutely delighted.
The Seahawks met Gino on Tinder, and all of a sudden it's like, once you're happy with your new person, you don't care as much, and like you said, Seattle, it was fun to root against another team. It was like you were watching 2 games every week. You want to see how the Seahawks did, but you also want to see how the Broncos did. And for me, and I think for a lot of people, yes, there was some kind of Schadenfreude going on where it's like, fuck Russ, let's see him struggle. A little bit of that is kind of fun. I never felt that too seriously, but most of them, I'm rooting for those draft picks, man. When you start to see Denver losing, you're like, oh man, I thought this pick was going to be in the late 20s. Now it might be middle of first round. Now it might be top 10. Oh my God, are they going to be picking in the top 5? Like, that was really fun down the stretch. So I think in that sense, now that dust has settled, Seattle has obviously crushed it. They got Charles Cross with one of those picks. They got Ken Walker with the other one. They're presumably going to get 2 highly rated prospects with the picks they got. Or this time, Noah Fant and Shelby Harris were good players for this team this past year. So, I mean, Russ is going to have to do a lot for Seattle not to have totally won that trade. And I think everyone kind of realizes that now and can kind of move forward.
Yeah, I mean, bar winning a Super Bowl for Denver, I think Seattle have won this trade easy without these picks this year. And if they get Jalen Carter or Will Anderson out of one of these picks, I mean, historic returns on a trade.
Oh,
and especially
absolutely.
Yeah, like a lot of people have seen, Russ kind of going downhill, and whether we wanted to admit it or not, it was happening to an extent. I didn't think he was, going to be this bad. Like this was, I mean, what the hell? What happened?
No one did. Even Schneider today was asked if you, and of course he's gonna be diplomatic about it, but I think he was being honest when he was asked today if he was surprised at how Russell Wilson played in Denver, and he was like, yeah, I was real surprised. I think that they saw him as they put it in the Brady Henderson article that came out right before the season. They saw him as a declining asset, which is probably true, but you can decline a lot from where Russell Wilson was at his peak and still be a really good quarterback. And I think that's who they thought they were trading away. Is still a really good quarterback whose best days are behind him, not someone who's totally washed up. And I don't think Russ is washed up. I think it was a bad situation with Nathaniel Hackett. I think Hackett made the deadly mistake of referring to Russell Wilson as a partner as opposed to his player and saying, me and Russ are going to be making these decisions together. That's a very dangerous thing to do with a player, especially one that hasn't been in that locker room. That's a message you're sending to the other guys that I can't imagine sits super well, especially if Russ doesn't come out and start balling. I mean, this isn't a lot different than how Aaron Rodgers' relationship with the Packers has been, except for Aaron Rodgers has been going out and winning MVPs and winning 13 games a year. It's different. Russell Wilson spent 4 or 5 years on or near Aaron Rodgers level, but the last 3, it hasn't been close.
Yeah, you can't.
Well,
you have to have.
I was just going to say, by the sounds of it, he didn't spend a lot of time in that locker room. He spent a lot of time in his office. So,
well, in fairness, he's not the first quarterback to have an office. Now, I can't remember who it was.
On the second floor.
They didn't spend their whole time in there. They just kind of had it to watch film and stuff in. But yeah, Russ, he was given the keys.
It probably on its own isn't a huge deal, but when you add it to everything else, then it looks bad. That's the risk, right? If you're going to elevate yourself above the team like that, especially a team you haven't been on, it's one thing if he asked the Seahawks for his own office on the second floor. Okay, great. They've already named the film room after you. Everyone understands that you're the guy, but you're not the guy in Denver yet. And, you start making I'm the guy moves before you've even taken a snap. It's a risk.
Yeah, no, they really fumble that situation. You really have to have the separation of players and coaches. You can't have your coach be your friend, let alone what appeared to be just Russell Wilson's yes man.
Right.
So yeah, it was an insane situation. I think it will go better this year. I don't know how much better. I'm not as high on Peyton as a lot of people, but happy to be proven wrong. We've got our picks, and Denver Broncos can go, win their division. It's fine.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, but let's move on. Let's wipe our hands of this. It's a Broncos player. We're not a Broncos podcast. We're going to be talking to some Seahawks, and let's talk about that number 5 pick, because Pete Carroll was in his pre-combine press conference today, and he was asked about that number 5 pick and if he would be looking at a quarterback, even though negotiations with Geno Smith at the moment are, he says, continuing positively. And because these are big contracts, they take time. So, first of all, your thoughts. I'll open up to Al and Jacson here. Your thoughts on his comments there saying he is looking at a quarterback at number 5. Quickly, I'll just give my one. I think that's just to drive people off the scent a bit. I think he's kind of saying, we'll pick at number 5 if one of you guys don't trade up with the Bears or the Cardinals at 1 and 3, so that you can take one of those quarterbacks, which means we'll get either and Will Anderson or Jalen Carter. Maybe that's their move, I think. But I'll start with you, Jackson. What do you think about the comments of them saying that they are possibly looking at quarterback at number 5?
I think that's a leverage quote. One, I look, if the top 4 teams are scared off of Bryce Young's size and he's there for you at 5, I mean, I think Bryce Young has opportunity. I think he's the one guy in this class that right away, a year from now, we could be looking at and saying, like, this is a guy that can be in that top tier of NFL quarterback. I think CJ Stroud and Will Levis can be good NFL quarterbacks, potentially great, but I think it's a little less likely. Anthony Richardson is probably the guy with the highest ceiling. It's really hard to, he's so raw. It's really hard to imagine that, you know, a year from now, it's like, oh, he's the guy. Cause, you know, I think probably the best comp for him is Justin Fields, and Justin Fields was awesome last year, and they're still not entirely sure that he's the guy. Same thing with kind of like Jalen Hurts, you know, it takes some of these more raw, and Jalen Hurts is far more polished. So is Fields than Richardson is. So, but if Bryce Young were to fall there, or if they are in love with Will Levis, as John Schneider is reportedly, then yeah, okay, sign Geno and draft the quarterback. But I think what they're trying to do is create leverage for, you know, most likely Will Anderson and Jalen Carter are going to be taken somewhere in those top 4 picks, which means there will be a quarterback, whether it's Young or Stroud or Levis, who is there at 5. And there are plenty of teams behind them who need that quarterback far more than Seattle does. And if everyone is feeling like, oh, there's no way Seattle's going to take a quarterback here, well, then they're not going to feel the same level of desperation to compete with each other to throw the biggest package at Seattle to get that pick. And so I think Carroll and Schneider are, one, doing their due diligence on potentially great quarterbacks. I mean, like Schneider said, they don't grow on trees. Yes, we want Geno, but we're still going to look at these other guys. And I think that's smart. I think that's just good process. But I'm guessing the most likely outcome here is that they are trying to drive up the price to trade back out of that pick if Anderson and Carter are gone.
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys. I mean, they're definitely, you know how they are, Pete and John. They talk. You can't believe a word they say half the time.
Mm-hmm.
But like, if they're not looking at quarterbacks in the draft, regardless of what year it is, I mean, they're not doing their jobs.
That's
so
exactly right.
Of course, they're going to be looking at quarterbacks, and especially now, like Geno isn't their long-term solution. Geno is good. I think they should re-sign him, but you know, they're not going to have him for the next 10 years.
That's exactly right.
Of course, they're going to be looking at quarterbacks, and
yeah,
there's going to be.
They should. You've got a team that's ready to win playoff games too. And what happens if Geno gets hurt? You know, you need to go to somebody that you say, yeah, can you keep the season afloat? If our starter misses a month, can we go 2-2 with this guy?
Yeah, and I mean, you're looking at guys that were looking at, you know, Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes when they had Russ. So, you know, it's perfectly understandable, and especially with the hype around Jalen Carter and Will Anderson, if they're gone, and if they don't want to trade back out of that pick, then there could be a scenario there where they do have CJ Stroud or Will Levis, and they want to take him, and they really like them, or even if they like Anthony Richardson at 5 for some reason.
Yeah, I would love for Seattle to draft Anthony Richardson, just not at 5. Although no. I do think he's going to blow this combine away here this week. I think he will be the buzziest athlete coming out of the combine. He's already the buzziest athlete going in, and there's nothing that I've seen that indicates he's not just going to absolutely dominate there. And so he may have a top 5 grade from some of these teams.
Yeah, totally. And that's it. And see, I was in the camp a couple of weeks ago where it was Jalen Carter, Will Anderson, or trade. I don't know. I was happy to keep Geno, you know, like I said, short to midterm, and sort of go from there. I think I'm still in that. I think with the quarterbacks coming out next year, I think if you can get a first round pick for next year with that number 5 pick, I think they should go for it.
Yes, I absolutely agree.
Yeah. if Jalen Carter or Will Anderson is not available, because I think they are the blue chip defensive guys that can be part of that franchise for the next, hopefully between 5 to 10 years. That can be the guy that we need. But like that, if it is the case that they're not available, I think, who is it that's just behind us? The Panthers and the Raiders. Listen, give us your first round pick this year, first round pick next year.
Yeah.
We'll talk any other tiny other picks you want to do, whatever. But I think that'd be the way to go next year, personally, for myself, because I think with the quarterbacks next year, I think, and then another year, Gino, maybe, especially because you're in that contract negotiation, you don't want to unsettle him anyway. Maybe just like say this year, it's all you again, pal. And then when it comes to next year in the draft, you draft your quarterback.
I would love that.
Because
I think I was just going to say, I agree with Al's point earlier. You know, if Anderson or Carter are there, I think they're the two best players in this draft. If they're there at 5, I think you sprint to the podium. I think you turn your phone off and you run to the podium to draft whichever one of those two guys is left.
Yeah. I can't remember what point I was going to make there. Go ahead. I'll see if I can remember it.
No, it's okay. Now, when it comes to sort of after that, because I know this was meant to be a free agency show, but just because it's draft season, it's so
Yeah,
interesting, because there's 2 first round picks and we never have a pick.
Too much to talk about with the 5th pick.
Oh, there's too much. But that's why I want to go down to the 20th pick. And what do you do there? Because if we're looking at, so, you know, at this time of year, we get to play around with the mock draft and everything like that. It's normally wide receiver that's there. If it's say Flowers, Addison, or who's the kid from? Is it Georgia?
Yeah, you've got Jacson Smith and Jigba from Ohio State and Quentin Johnson
That's him.
From Texas Christian. I think those are kind of the four receivers with first round buzz. And I mean, the top 3, Jacson Smith and Jigba, Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnson, everyone's got them in a different order. Those 3 are kind of the top guys. I've fallen in love with Zay Flowers out of Boston College. Any of those 4 would be my top pick for Seattle's second choice in the first round. And at least one of them will be there at 20.
Yeah. Now, there's also another one. I think it's this is a different position, and this is just me looking at needs as well. And that's if we want to go defense in that first round. What do you think about getting a safety? I think it's Brian Branch from Alabama. I think could be there around 20.
That would be awesome. If Branch is there, that's great. I mean, Seattle has the highest paid safety group by a mile in the NFL, but they're able to get out. And I say this as a big Jamal Adams fan, They can get out if he gets hurt again or just isn't the same player. They can get out of his contract pretty cleanly after this year, I believe. Either way, he has shown durability issues over the last couple of years. Quandre Diggs is going to be a cut candidate in a year or 2 as well. He signed a huge contract. He's getting up there. You got to have that next guy. And we've seen them try and take these guys like Tedrick Thompson, and I'm trying to remember Delano Hill, these kind of mid-round safeties in the past that haven't worked out. And, you know, they took Marquise Blair, hasn't been able to stay healthy. If you can get a blue chip safety without paying for it on the open market, like they have the last, you know, with Diggs and Adams, I think you do it. I'm 100% with you. I'd lean wide receiver there if you can get it. Just because if you get elite wide receiver play on a rookie contract, it's a bigger savings over elite safety play on a rookie contract, if that makes sense. Top wide receivers are just worth more, and you're going to be paying that guy the same no matter what position he's playing pretty much on his rookie contract. So I'd take my shot at wide receiver just for the value add. But if you're not in love with one of those guys and Branch is there, you won't catch me complaining.
Yeah, I
Al,
think
what are you thinking?
I I do like Brian Branch at 20. You're not going to hear any complaints about it from me, but I would rather they went wide receiver there, because the more you look at some teams, especially the Bengals, they have three legit wide receivers with arguably the worst offensive line in the league, and they made it deep into the playoffs. It The value that a wide receiver adds there. I mean, I don't think they will, to be honest. I don't think Pete and John are going to take a receiver at 20. It's just they might. They might.
Yeah.
They've changed the way they've started drafting, but
Yeah, it's interesting.
yeah.
You know, they were willing to take D. Eskridge in the second round a couple years ago, which felt like an overdraft at the time, and has certainly played out that way. And he was kind of like a fringe. Everything had to go right for him to justify that draft slot. You've got a little bit more runway at 20 with the caliber of prospect that you'd be taking there. The other thing is, I do think that a wide receiver situation, to both of your guys' point, it's similar to the safety situation. You have two great receivers there. But you gotta, I mean, Lockett is getting up there. I think Lockett's one of those guys who will be a good receiver for a long time, but he probably won't be this explosive for too much longer. He's also fragile. DK Metcalf, the team's been extremely fortunate that he has stayed so healthy, and he's built for it, obviously. But you do have to, you can't just set and forget in the NFL. You need depth. Like, you need depth. And yeah, you look at the Bengals. The Bengals are the only team with, like, truly the only team in the NFL with three bona fide, very good wide receivers. Every fan base wants a third great wide receiver. That's awesome if you can get it. It's rare, but what you do create is options, right? If you have a guy that makes a Tyler Lockett expendable and you can save $15 million in a year or two by releasing him, there's value in that. Also, you look at the top teams, and you look at the two teams that were in the Super Bowl. They do have three good receiving options. It's just one of them's a tight end for each team. The Chiefs had obviously Kelsey, and then they had two really good receivers in Juju Smith-Schuster and Marquez Valdez-Scantling, both of whom I think, well, Juju actually had great numbers. He almost had 1,000 yards and 80 catches this year, but I think that if you didn't have Kelsey getting a 30% target share, you'd see those guys putting up better numbers. And with Philly, you saw that offense transform when they brought A.J. Brown in, because now Devontae Smith gets to be your number two, which is unfair. Dallas Goedert is an elite receiving tight end. They have three options. And Seattle has been a team that has, for the last 8 years, really funneled all their targets into two guys. And which two guys that has been has evolved, but it's always been two. And that's a dangerous game. Seattle's gotten away with it. But that's a dangerous game to play.
Yeah. You kind of touched on, and that was going to be my next question. If a wide receiver is taken at 20, is there a possibility of Tyler Lockett being a sort of cut candidate?
Not this year, but after this year. Lockett's one of those guys. I think he is to the offense in a lot of ways what Bobby Wagner was to the defense. I think his value goes beyond just what he does on the field. You couldn't ask for a better on-field receivers coach than Tyler Lockett. I had the opportunity to grab lunch with Michael Bumpus, who does some sports talk radio in Seattle, but he was also highly recruited collegiate wide receiver and spent some time in the NFL, including with the Seahawks. And he talked, I said, what are the things you look for in a receiver that the rest of us don't see? And he says, having a plan. He goes, we focus so much on the receivers, the great plays that they make, and can they get open and all this stuff. He's like, that's great if the quarterback sees you, but most of the time the quarterback isn't going to see you exactly at the right time with the defense doing exactly what you're expecting them to do. And so the wide receiver has to know 3 steps into his route what's happening, and is he going to plan B, and can he execute plan B? And I asked him to rate Tyler Lockett on a scale of 1 to 10 on that, and he said 9.8. And I said, okay, by comparison, what would you put DK at? And he said a 7, but getting better. And I think DK is actually pretty good at that stuff. So it just speaks to how professional, how polished Tyler Lockett is. And he's the kind of guy you want if you are going to bring in a younger receiver. I think you want there to be some overlap for a year or two before you move on from Lockett, because I think the benefit that you would get from having Lockett kind of coaching up that guy, showing him what being a true professional elite wide receiver looks like, has a lot of downstream benefits. Also, we saw what this passing offense looked like when Tyler Lockett was out last year, and it sucked.
Yeah, I've just to your last point there, I've said that so many times. Now there are a lot of reasons, but this offense collapses when Tyler Lockett is out.
Yep.
Because then you just don't have that many options. You have DK. We have some I like Will Dissly, I like Colby Parkinson, I like Noah Fant.
Totally.
They're all right.
You got to scheme. You got to scheme those guys open, though. Right? They're not just going to go beat somebody. I mean, Noah Fant can. Colby Parkinson, I think, is going to be an elite kind of contested catch, high traffic type guy just because of his size, and he's got great hands. I don't think he dropped a ball in college, but you got to scheme those guys open. And Tyler Lockett, you don't have to scheme open. Tyler Lockett gets open.
Yeah, I actually I remember there was a graph going around. It was like the open score of wide receivers. And there was like the middle of the pack and then some outliers, and then Tyler Lockett all the way out, at the very top. He is the most often open wide receiver in the league.
Yes.
By far.
Yep. I think you hang on to him. I think you pay that skill set, whatever you have to pay that skill set for, as long as that's what they're giving you. As long as Tyler Lockett is an elite separator, you keep him on the team.
Absolutely.
I want to move more to the O-line next, because we have our two tackles. Cross and Lucas are going to be there. Absolutely delighted to have them. But we saw towards the end of last season, the interior offensive line really struggled with pressure. We saw today, Austin Blight had retired. Now, he was a free agent anyway, but any question of him coming back now is done. His backup, Kyle Fuller, is a free agent. I'd imagine they bring him back to play backup. On the guard positions, Phil Haynes just signed a new deal to keep him there for a year. Gabe Jacson looks like he's going to be cut to save cap room. They definitely need to sort of get people in there in the center and guard position. I think Damian Lewis is actually coming to his last year of his rookie deal as well. So there's question marks on getting him signed to a new contract after next season too. Looking at, sort of first of all, free agency, not a lot there at all. And that's for almost every position this off season. The second highest rated center, Ethan Postage. Will they bring him back? Probably not, but it's a fun name to have. And when it comes to guards, there's not a lot there. If you want to go for someone from the Falcons like Elijah Wilkinson, you can, or the Eagles guard, what is it?
Seumalo?
Isaac Seumalo. He is a free agent this year. I'm no word yet if they are going to re-sign him or not, but the guard and center positions, Jackson, would you prefer them to sort of look at that in free agency, or are you happy for them to try and address it in the draft, which means that you would have a majority of rookie / second year players on that O-line, maybe when you need probably a little more experience?
I think for me, it's both. I do think that, Seattle's got some cap space. I think they've got the 6th most effective cap space in the NFL. That being said, it's only about $30 million. And, the nice thing about it being a thin free agent class is you're probably not going to have to spend a ton. There's not a lot of teams with a lot of money to spend. And the reason for that is teams kicked a lot of salary cap down the road during the COVID year when the salary cap contracted by $20 million. And so to make the budgets work that year, you had teams move a lot of money into future years, and that's all coming due right now. So that's why you see a lot less available free agency money to be spent league wide. You've got the Bears with $100 million. They're going to be able to take their pick. They're going to get all the guys they want. No one can outbid the Bears this year. But after that, you're not going to have to pay a lot for if you want to get a Connor McGovern from the Jets, who really kind of reignited his career there, had a really good year as a really athletic center. I like Garrett Bradbury with the Vikings, similar story. You don't have to spend a lot to get that. And then you can draft guys that frees you up to draft guys in the 3rd, 4th, 5th rounds that can maybe be flex offensive line positions, play center and guard. As far as the guards go, I mean, I like Siamalu a lot. He would be my number one target from the Eagles. You just watch how that team handles short yardage situations, which is something Seattle really struggled with this year. If the Eagles had 3 or fewer yards to go on 3rd or 4th down, they just got it, right? I mean, it was almost like, I don't know if you guys were following the Seahawks back in the Walter Jones, Steve Hutchison days when Sean Alexander was the running back, but I think that year on 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1, they were like 40 for 40 because they just ran off the left side. Everyone knew they were going to do it. They did it every time. They got the first down every time because those guys were so good. And Siamalu was a big part of that for the Eagles. So I'd love to see them get him. I like Wilkinson from the Falcons. And then, you've got guys that can be useful, that can be better than Gabe Jackson. And, like a Michael Schofield out of Chicago. I like the Evan Brown kid from the Lions. Like, these are guys that aren't going to eat up all of your free agency money. But Seattle doesn't have a ton of holes. Like, their needs are pretty siloed. It's in the trenches. It's interior line on both sides of the ball. And then you're looking for depth at linebacker and safety and edge, just like every other team. But, I'd love to see them go after Siamalu and just try and be the highest bidder for that guy. And, I like McGovern and Bradbury at center. I think you can spend $20 million of your $30 million and really shore up the inside of your line and then draft for depth.
Yeah. I mean, you pretty much named all the guys, and Siamalu is kind of the number one interior guy there. I will say, though, I was looking at over the cap earlier, and according to them, Seahawks only have 14 million in effective cap space right now after all their signings.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that changes things. I imagine that number will grow between now and then.
They're definitely going to move some money around. They can, I think, if they do absolutely everything they can do to make money, they can make 30 million on top of that. They won't. They never do. But they can. I think they'll make 10 to 15 million. Because they have to fit Gino in somewhere. They can't just push all that money down the road and have him, having a $55 million cap hit in his last year.
That's right.
But yeah, I think they can get some names in free agency. I don't love the centers. Connor McGovern is the one, or Posick, but I think he played well enough to kind of price himself out of Seattle.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah. So
yeah, you just wish it was a different class. You just wish it was a different class of free agents.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to say about this free agency. I like some of the guys in the draft. Like, if you're looking at guards, Steve Avila, his pass pro isn't amazing. He can get better at it, but he's just a mauler in the run game. I really like him. And John Michael Schmitz, I think, is everyone's number one center, but he is 24, so you kind of want to get the time out of your center if you're drafting a rookie. But
yeah, and the concern with older rookies is, did it take them until they were 23 years old to be able to beat 20-year-olds? That's it. Age for offensive linemen matters a little bit less to me because you see a lot of 30-plus-year-old all pros. It is a position where if you're good, you can be good for a really long time. It's not like running back where those are the outliers. So I'm a little less concerned of it from a longevity standpoint, but to your point, was this guy winning when he was 21 years old, or did he have to be 2 or 3 years older than the guys he was blocking in order to be as highly rated as he is? So that'll be really interesting to see. I mean, I hate to keep bagging on this, but I brought up D. Eskridge earlier. To draft him over Creed Humphrey is just a move that Seattle will feel negative ripple effects for a long time.
Well, I mean, pretty much the entire league passed on him twice, so it wasn't only Seattle. I mean, it is a valid point. I think like center was absolutely like a bigger need, and they should have drafted Creed Humphrey. But I don't like playing what if with the draft. You can do that with every pick at
Oh yeah,
every draft, and it's just
well, and we take all
you'll
the
just
good
drive
picks for
yourself
granted,
insane.
right? Yeah, we take all the good picks for granted. We never play out what if they didn't draft Tariq Woolen? What if they didn't draft
Exactly.
Bobby Wagner? Or what if they didn't draft Richard Sherman? You know, we don't do that. So
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, what do you guys think about about Luke Weipler? He is younger. Obviously, he's going to be a little further down the draft board. But if you have concerns, like you said, over age and stuff like that, he is only 21. I don't know. I think he could be a decent alternative to have if you still have those doubts about Schmidt.
yeah, I mean, we're talking about depth pieces, really. I mean, you know, I think there's a few guys out there that can be difference makers. I think you're really just trying to build out your depth for as inexpensively as you can with this offseason. And I think that Seattle is going to be really mindful of next year's class, both in the draft and free agency, which purports to be better on both fronts than this class is. They want to make sure that they're in a position where they can spend competitively for those guys. So they may not blow their whole wad on the future of their interior offensive line or defensive line for that matter in this offseason. Although I do think the defensive line is much deeper in the draft this year than offensive line is. And so they're going to have opportunities to address that easier through the draft than they will on the offensive side of the ball.
Mm-hmm. I have a list here, and I want to get a quick keep or sell on the free agents that the Seahawks have this year. Very quick fire. So I have Geno Smith. Keep. Drew Lock.
Yeah. For the right price.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Sure. Yeah, if he wants,
if he's going to cost you like $2 or $3 million, then no. I mean, just draft a 7th round rookie and get like there's 30 free agent quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think Drew Lock is eminently replaceable.
Yeah. Okay. Rashad Penny.
I think they should bring him back. Absolutely.
He'll be cheap.
He is so good when he's healthy.
He's so fucking good. He's basically
See,
Nick Chubb when he's healthy. It's crazy.
I know, it's ridiculous. Like on potential alone, he's worth paying $5 million. You know, I wouldn't love $5 million, but
I don't think it'll take that. But yeah, I agree with you.
Johnson Abram.
No.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't get a chance to see a lot from him, but he could be cheap depth. He's a first round pick that just didn't work out with the Raiders, and I see no reason why you don't try and get him a shot if he doesn't cost too much.
Yeah, I suppose if he doesn't cost too much, but no.
LJ Collier, no. Okay, fair enough. I fully agree, but it's crazy how this guy's like a first round pick and he's just completely fallen off the face of the earth. And what a horrible first round pick that was. Artie Burns.
We never saw him. You know, I was so excited about having Artie Burns over because, you know, the metrics loved him as far as playing press coverage as a slot corner, which is a really difficult thing to do. He graded out exceptionally well. With Sean Desai leaving for the Eagles, believe it or not, that makes me a little bit more willing to pass on Burns, although I don't think he'll be expensive either. Burns was brought in by Desai kind of like with a plan for this guy because they used him really well in Chicago when he was there. I just don't know if the next guy has that plan for him. So I'd like to keep him, but I wouldn't spend a lot.
Yeah, same.
Okay. Marquise
because the thing that you got to keep in mind with this stuff too is, okay, we say, yeah, all right, he's, you know, we pass on this guy. Well, okay, you have to fill that spot now, right? It is a zero-sum game. If you lose a guy, you got to replace him. You got to spend something, draft capital or money to replace him. So, you know, for a lot of these guys, it's it's tough to say in a vacuum, keep or pass. Although I appreciate the sentiment behind the game because I think it's a far more effective way to do radio. But it's like for each of these guys that we say, yeah, let's pass. Okay, we got to replace them. And how confident are we that we're going to be able to do that in free agency or in the draft? So I'm always reticent to create unnecessary holes in the roster, but guys like Artie Burns or Jonathan Abrams probably aren't going to move the needle a ton if you let them go.
Yeah. Well, I think when it comes to Artie Burns in that position, especially, I think we didn't see a lot of Trey Brown last year, still recovering from the injury. And I think that is a ready-made replacement because his rookie year, we saw before he got injured how good he was.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that because Michael Jackson played so well on that other side to Tariq Woolen last season, we probably didn't see as much as maybe we would have liked. But I think maybe next year is the comeback year for Trey Brown and obviously letting someone like Artie Burns go, who we, like you said, we did not see. The only time we saw him was when we saw the list of inactives released before every game day,
Yep.
So I think, Trey Brown comeback season 2023. I'm here for it.
I agree. I mean, Seattle is essentially getting 2 additions to their secondary this year with Jamal Adams and Trey Brown.
Yeah. Marquise Goodwin.
If they're not drafting, then they should bring him back. He was good.
Yes.
I don't think he's like great number 3, but he was good enough to bring back. I liked what I saw from him.
Yeah, his story is amazing. The team loves him. He does the thing that Pete Carroll likes from his third receiver, which is be able to stretch the field. They've always tried to get that guy, their third receiver. They've done it with Jaron Brown and Chris Matthews. And, oh my gosh, I'm spacing on another guy. He had that crazy 4th and 1 touchdown catch against the Panthers a couple years ago. Anyway, they've had these. David Moore. Thank you. That's what Pete has wanted from his third receiver historically. I think Goodwin is perfectly fine at that. To Al's point, yes, I agree. If you're going to draft somebody, then you don't pay Marquise Goodwin. The challenge is you have to make that decision before the draft. And so, I think you have to just be really solidified as to whether or not you're going to draft a receiver, and then you let that inform your decision with regards to Goodwin.
Yeah, I think if you are Trey, I kind of agree. If you are drafting, let him go, because I'm also okay with having Cade Johnson come in and have a little more involvement. Derek Young is going to have a lot more involvement next year as well. So I think if you have that draft pick as well, you have DK and Tyler, those 4 or 5 bodies there in the wide receiver position, I think makes a decent group.
That's a great point. Derek Young is a very interesting depth play at wide receiver for sure. Freak athlete.
DK Metcalf light.
Yeah, without any of the refinement, and DK is not refined.
I'll give you 2 more names. I won't go through the whole list because we'll be here. I won't want to keep you any longer than we need to there, Jackson. So Cody Barton.
God, I like Cody Barton more than most. I don't think this team can afford to create another hole at linebacker. I don't think they're going to be able to get the top linebackers in this free agent class. I don't think they should spend on those. I don't think they're in a position to get a great linebacker in the draft. I think you keep Cody Barton. I think Cody Barton was the victim of a lot of people being out of position, himself included, this past year, but he actually played pretty damn well overall as that second linebacker. And with Jordan Brooks hurt and maybe not ready for the beginning of the season, I just don't think you can create another spot there. Is he going to be a great linebacker? Is he going to be KJ Wright? No, but I don't think there's a better option out there.
Yeah, I agree with Jordan Brooks' injury. They have no off-ball linebackers on the roster ready to go, so that's a no-brainer.
I agree.
Like And yeah, he was totally like people were so unfair to him. Like he was put in a horrible position this year. And he performed really well. I think
Mhm.
the start of the year wasn't amazing, but he definitely got into a groove as the year went on. And I think, yeah, absolute no brainer. Bring him back.
Now, do you still bring him back if there's a chance for Bobby coming back?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Okay. I don't know if there's a chance that Bobby comes back. I don't know if they'd able to afford to bring
Oh,
Bobby
that'd be
back
so
unless he takes a
cool.
very team friendly deal.
That would be the coolest thing ever. I don't think he's going to take a team friendly deal. I think he played well enough last year that he's going to cost legit money, probably similar to what he was set to make, which is I think like $11 million with the Rams. So, yes, if you can get him for 8 all day, 11. I mean, look, they could sign him for anything. I would be happy as a fan.
Yeah.
And look, they had Bobby and Jordan Brooks and Cody Barton all on the same team together for a couple of years, or for a year anyway, and it worked. So I don't think that they're superfluous players. I think that they can play off of each other just fine.
Okay. And last time I'm going to ask on this, Ryan Neal.
I want Ryan Neal on this team badly. I think that his entrance into the starting lineup after the Saints game, I think it was, you saw this defense change. I thought he was the perfect complement to Quandre Diggs. And when you get Adams back, hopefully, and from what I've heard, the goal is to get Adams more into the box, which means you need another coverage safety. I think Ryan Neal is very, very good. I want him on the team.
Yeah. PFFL Pro Ryan Neal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's another one. Absolutely. He's familiar with the scheme, and he played really well when he was healthy last year. Like when he was fully healthy, he was all over the field.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah, there was one point last year, didn't he? He had like an ice pack on his knee, a cast on his hand, his arm in a sling. He was injured in probably every way imaginable, and he was still saying, "Yeah, I'm playing Sunday."
Yep.
Like that's a true battler, and that's someone that you definitely want on your team, and that's, I dare say, Cam Chancellor-esque a little bit.
He's got a little bit to him. I will probably never. I'll probably never put another safety on Cam's level, but as far as like traits go, he's got some of that in him.
Yeah, not putting him with Cam Chancellor, but JL Skinner in the draft. Oh, fascinating guy.
He's a hitter. I haven't had a chance to watch a lot about him, but he's a hitter.
Yeah.
Right. So Jacson, you've been really, really generous with your time. We really appreciate it. One last question we want to ask you before we let you go.
Lay it on me.
What part of this off season on the Seahawks perspective are you looking forward to most?
It's the easy answer. It's the low hanging fruit, but number 5, man, we've never had it. Seattle hasn't drafted this high ever in the Pete Carroll, John Schneider era. Thank you, Russ, for one last parting gift. Like, this is awesome, man. It's so much fun. The draft has not been that interesting for Seattle from like a national perspective in a long time. Last year it was like, yes, okay, we've got a top 10 pick. That's exciting. But we knew they were going to take an offensive tackle. Like, you just knew they were going to take. There was zero drama to it at all. They were going to take. There was a great class of tackles last year. I think 4 with grades in the top 10. You knew they were getting one of them. They got my favorite one of them. But there was no drama. It was exciting. There's no drama. This is drama. They could take a quarterback. They could take one of the 2 best defensive players in this draft. They could trade it down for a haul. Like, things have lined up perfectly this year to have a top 5 pick. The leverage of having a top 5 pick this year is high compared to other draft classes, just because there are so many quarterback needy teams. And this is a quarterback heavy draft at the top. I cannot wait to see what they do with it.
Yeah, so exciting. Like, You said it. I mean, how exciting is the fifth pick? Like,
we'll probably not see it again for a long time.
No, and the possibilities. I mean, the amount of scenarios you could go through of what will happen with that pick, whether it's a trade or, whatever player they might take with it is just, yeah. My favorite part of the offseason will be when they take Will Anderson at 5.
Yes. Oh man, absolutely. That will be amazing. Not might be amazing. That will be amazing. I'm manifesting it with you, Al.
Well, look, I like your answers, but they're both wrong. The best part of the Seahawks offseason is going to be when they release those lovely throwback unis that they're going to be wearing next year.
Yes.
Oh,
that's going to be the best part of the offseason.
They are going to make so much money with those unis.
Oh, I've already set aside my money. I've already said it. I'm just waiting to see who they pick at number 5. I'm hoping when it is Will Anderson and he has his number, that's the first one I'm getting. 100%.
Yep. I'm getting that DK Metcalf in the throwback blue day one.
Yeah. Al, who's your number? Who's your name? Come on.
I like Woolen. I don't know why.
Ooh. Okay. Yeah.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah. Well, see, because you play cornerback, so that's why, isn't it?
Linebacker.
Yeah, I remember you playing cornerback for a bit before as well.
I'm too slow. I'm not svelte enough.
Jackson, it's been fantastic speaking to you today. We really appreciate
this has been great. No, I really appreciate the opportunity to come on with you guys. I really enjoyed it.
Love listening to Cigar Thoughts. I love you. Love the show. I've listened to it for a long time. It's been great to have you on the show. I never got to actually ask you beforehand. Have you ever had the chance to come over to Ireland?
No, but it is on the bucket list for sure. I'm gonna when I can finally pull it off, I'm gonna bug you guys.
Absolutely.
There'll be no bugging. Don't worry. You're gonna need tour guides for the best points. Yeah,
that's what I need, baby.
Yeah, don't worry about that. You got your tour guides right here. It's all good. You just tell us what you need. You need we actually have some sneaky good places for some good cigars as well. So we'll take you there too. Don't worry about that.
I have no doubts. All right.
Listen, we are going to wrap up the show at this point. Al, as always, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on. Always good to talk Seahawks.
Always good. And we will be back again soon. We won't leave it for another 3-4 weeks next time. We'll try and get back in a week or so with another edition of the Irish Seahawks Show. If you haven't already, make sure you have subscribed to us on YouTube, Under Center Podcast. If you are watching us, like the video as well. We really appreciate it. Comment on who you want the Seahawks to draft at number 5, or if you want them to trade back, let us know. Follow us on our social medias at Undercenter Pod, Twitter, Instagram. It's all there. Undercenter Podcast for your podcast as well if you want to listen to us on the go. Cigar Thoughts to listen to Jackson's podcast as well. You'll find that there too. Jackson, where can we find you on Twitter?
It's simple, kind of. It's just my name, at Jacson Bevens. The challenging part is there is no K in Jackson. It is Jacson, Jacson Bevens. Find me there and hit me up. I'll hit you back.
Excellent stuff. So like I said, that's where we're going to wrap up this edition of the show. Until next time, stay safe and we'll see you soon.